after Scotland Yard's anti-terrorist squad raided a London flat to free 3 Iranians. They'd been kidnapped and held to ransom for several £1 million. The Iranians were in Britain to negotiate a £50 million arms deal, and it's understood that 3 other negotiators were being held hostage in Belgium. Scotland Yard men with rifles surrounded the flat in Paddington before officers burst into rooms on the 13th floor. It happened in the early hours of Friday morning, but details have only been released tonight. And the operation to recover 31 gold bars left behind in the wreck of the HMS Edinburgh could be threatened. Allegations in tomorrow's Sunday Times claim that human bones were brought up with the £40 million worth of gold. Reporter Barry Penrose, the only journalist on board throughout the operation, also claims explosives were carried on the salvage ship. 60 sailors died when the Edinburgh sank in 1942, and because it's an official war grave, the salvage company needed special permission from the government. They had to agree not to disturb human remains or use explosives. The Sunday Times says its allegations are to be investigated by government officials. It's now almost certain that the Indian government will ban England's cricket tour this winter because of objections to the presence of Jeff Boycott and Jeff Cook, who've had links with South Africa. India's tour of England next summer is now also in danger, and games with Pakistan could be affected.
Change of heart by India, and it could drive world cricket into opposing camps, black and white. They've always worried about boycott, but gave the tour party their blessing last month. Jeff Cook was a surprise selection and a political gamble. He's captained the South African side Eastern Province and would have returned there this winter.
Well, I think it's one step nearer the dividing of white nations and black nations playing Test cricket, which I think will take a lot of the glamour from the game in so much that it's the mixing of these countries, the creeds, that make cricket the great all-round game that it is.
The promise of demonstrations and the prospect of riots like these among India's fanatical crowds has forced the government's hand. Could anything save the tour?
It's a change in the composition of the team, which alone can save the tour.
In other words, the selectors have to drop Boycott and Cook?
Well, I wouldn't put it that strongly. I would leave them, free them and the players concerned, free to decide how best to do that.
There'd be no likelihood of us changing the team. We clearly chose the team as we saw fit, and that team was accepted and welcomed at the time.
Foreign news, and Greece's 7 million voters will be going to the polls tomorrow for the most important Greek general election since the war. Campaigning has reached high excitement as the ruling New Democracy Party battles with the Socialist Party, led by Mr. Papandreou, which wants to take Greece out of NATO and the common market. The Israeli war hero and politician Moshe Dayan, who died last night, will be buried tomorrow at the farm where he grew up. The Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Begin, will be at the state funeral. It's now known that 93 men have died in the Japanese pit disaster at Yubari. The dead include 10 rescuers who went down into the shafts where there was a lethal gas leak and fire. Mr. Ray Buckton, the train drivers' union leader, says they're calling off their threatened one-day national strike next Wednesday because of a promise by British Rail of full discussions before there are cuts in services. Claims that the Princess of Wales hunted and killed a red deer at Balmoral earlier in the week have been made by the League Against Cruel Sports. They say they're shocked and disgusted, and they've complained to the palace. Buckingham Palace confirmed tonight that the Princess did go deer stalking, but said they'd no details of any particular incident. Swansea have gone to the top of the First Division, the first time a Welsh club has achieved this since 1924. With news of that, plus all the rest of the day's sport, here's our sports correspondent, Tony Francis.
Yes, Swansea City are doing their best to convince us that rugby isn't the only national game in Wales. A 2-1 win at Stoke makes them the first Welsh side to top Division 1 in more than half a century. Here's the goal which scrambled them back into the match.
But definitely one goal is not enough to beat them at the moment. Here's Latchford cutting in, and that is Stanley, and he's stuck it in the net, and it's 1-1.
Ipswich lost the leadership, going down 2-1 at Everton. They never recovered from Ferguson's third-minute goal. Ipswich in white.
It's a focal point. Thomas curls it in. Ferguson glances it in.
Spurs move into second place by winning at Sunderland, and West Ham lost their first league match since last Boxing Day, 3-2 to the champions Aston Villa. It's Eric Morecambe and Elton John neck and neck at top of the second. Luton hit 6 and their neighbours Watford won at Cambridge. The cold, the wet and some inspiring rugby by the Midlands combined to make it a disastrous opening to the Wallabies tour. They lost 16-10 at Leicester, from where Ian Edwards reports.
The Midlands in white began to cut back the Australians' 6-point lead with the first try of the match from Steve Holdstock. Apart from the kicking of Paul McLean and the occasional slick passing of their backs, the tourists found it difficult to adjust to the wintry conditions and only once managed a penetrating run, culminating in a try for Brendan Moon. But within 2 minutes, the Midlands regained their lead, when from this rolling maul, England international Nick Jevons emerged to claim the winning try. Perhaps too much had been expected of the Wallabies on their first match in this country. But after their recent victories against the New Zealand All Blacks and France, we didn't expect to see their front 5 forwards disrupted as comprehensively as this. They clearly have a lot of work before them if they're to live up to their reputation as one of the world's best teams. But afterwards, their captain warned that in a couple of weeks their pack would be back to top form. Ian Edwards, ITN Sport at Leicester.
Bjorn Borg is retiring from tennis, but only for 4 months. The 5-time Wimbledon champion said he was mentally and physically tired of tennis and needed a long rest. Racing, Joe Mercer's patience proved a virtue in the Cesarewitch at Newmarket. He came from behind to win on the 14-to-1 chance Holsbury.
Coming inside the final furlong, Military Band, Highland with Halsbury finishing strongly. Then Donegal Prince on the far rails, well inside the final furlong, and Halsbury comes in and take it up, but Highland finishing strongly on the far side. And it's Halsbury in the lead from Highland in second place. Coming up towards
and the starting prices, Halsbury 14-to-1, Highland 14-to-1, Military Band 11-2, Donegal Prince 40-1.
Well, that's all for now. ITN will be back on the air tomorrow, starting with news at 1. And until then, from all of us here, it's good night for now.
Nearly 1 billion people in the third world are trapped in a cycle of unrelenting poverty. Without help from countries like Britain, they can't hope to improve their lot. Next week, at a summit meeting in Mexico, world leaders will be confronted with this issue. Can they hammer out a better deal for the world's poor? Watch Weekend World live tomorrow at noon.
Now, here's the latest weather forecast for the London weekend television area. It will be cloudy with rain at times and rather cold with a brisk northeasterly wind. Tomorrow morning, drier, brighter weather will move in from the west, with some sunshine to come during the afternoon. It will still feel rather cold everywhere as the wind turns northerly and eases somewhat. Minimum temperatures overnight, 6 degrees centigrade, 43 degrees Fahrenheit, and the maximum temperature tomorrow, 11 degrees centigrade, 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Next tonight, our Saturday film, Bloom in Love.